welcome to the next episode of the ABD podcast. We're joined today by Iain from Endeavour. Hello, how are you doing, man?
I'm not too bad. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, not too bad, surviving on. From the band today, we're joined by Callum and Toby. You guys good?
Yeah, not bad, thank you. I'm pretty good.
Excellent.
Good, thank you.
What exciting shit have we been up to this week?
Skyrim.
Okay.
I am back on Skyrim.
That's all you need to say.
Yep. Just modded. I spent the afternoon today modding the shit out of Skyrim. So, yep, that's been my day. And
I think if you get to the point where it doesn't run because it's too modded, that's where you know you've kind of hit the sweet spot.
I've broken a few things which I've had to sort of undo, but you know, it's pretty smooth now.
Sure.
I've got it working pretty well. That's good. Playing as a red guard this time around. I've never played as a red guard before, so I thought, give it a go, red guard.
I don't know what that means.
I've never played Skyrim.
What?
No, I'm very unconnected to not modern gaming, but I kind of avoid any kind of online stuff because like I realize I grew up with gaming. Like I always played like one-player games and kind of role-player stuff, and whenever you end up gaming with other people, somebody's getting it from somebody. Just like you end up arguing about, even when you're on the same team, you're just like, oh my god, why'd you do that? So I tend to play by myself a lot.
That's what we sound like on Warzone.
So that's exactly us. Yeah, to be fair, Skyrim is just a single player, so it's only me just getting angry at me. So
yeah, and it's not that I kind of find it funny, but I tend to the mindset for gaming for me is kind of like doors closed. You know, I'm just playing Arkham Asylum, or like I got this game called Maneater, which is like a shark-based game. You play as the shark and eating people, and I haven't played it in a while, but like it's right up my street, just swimming around and just eating,
chilling out, murdering.
Yeah,
that's the way to do it.
Yeah, totally is.
So what have you been doing in lockdown there, man? Because the music is just at the moment. So like I know Endeavour was going to release you're working on an EP.
Yeah,
I saw something about that. Yeah.
So what's going on with that, Ian?
It's a bit of a long story. I mean, I guess in recent news, we recently announced that Chris, our singer, he's not in the band anymore now. Yeah. So we've sort of, I mean, amicably parted ways. I mean, his life's changed quite drastically. You know, he's got a kid now. And,
he had a kid, didn't he?
And yeah, I mean, you know, obviously the lead up to that, his life just got incredibly busy and different, and so you know, like he could never seem to get around to recording the vocals, so and it just became obvious it wasn't going to work after some time. So I mean, you know, the drums and bass and most of the guitars have been recorded for over a year at this point.
Wow.
And so it's kind of just sitting there waiting to be finished. And so now we're obviously on the hunt for a vocalist, and you know, obviously I always do my bit of vocals on the EP, but I wasn't gonna completely take over those duties because it's just a lot of work to play and sing. It's already hard to play and sing the stuff I've got to do anyway.
It's not exactly easy material.
No, and that's my fault. But and also I think just like with the kind of, you know, the image of the band on stage, it's kind of always been, it's always been, you know, dedicated guitarist, dedicated bass player, dedicated drummer, dedicated singer. It's just like everybody has always fit into a role quite comfortably. So I think, and that's something that we don't want to change really. So basically the current status of the band is it's kind of like unintentionally on hiatus, but it's not like fully hiatus. It's just we can't really do anything until we've got a singer and when we got a singer, we can finish the EP and we can put it out, and that'll be the next step of the band. But
so it's a frustrating kind of area to be, I imagine.
Yeah, and I think it's been incredibly frustrating. But the part of the reason, because we left announcing Chris's departure from the band for a while because we thought, oh no, like we'll wait until we find somebody and then we can announce like his departure and then having a new singer. But after a while, it was just like, why don't we just maybe announce that he's out, and that might kickstart some kind of, some people, people might see like, oh, he's out, maybe I know a guy who'll be interested, and so it just to keep the ball rolling a bit, because we were kind of sitting around, scratching our heads, sort of not really knowing what to do next, as far as like, how do we start looking for a singer who can do what Chris does, Yeah,
I was just say, it's not exactly easy boots to fill.
No.
So it's like, this is the problem, Ian. This is when you have a band who are all amazing musicians. If one of them leaves, hard to replace.
The effect of that is felt very intensely.
Yeah.
But I think I at this point I'm trying not to think too really all that far ahead, if far ahead at all. I'm just like when I talk to the guys, I'm just saying we've announced that he's out. Now we'll just look for a singer. That's as far forward as we can think, because there's literally nothing else we can do at this point until we find somebody. So yeah,
I can relate, man, because obviously I don't know, Metaprism's we found someone now, but it took 3 years to find someone, like nearly
right.
3, like just because on and on, like we found someone, then they couldn't commit, then we found another person who was a bit flaky, then we when we did our album, then we had Jut come back and do the album again for us, but he was only a guest on the album, so we still were.
Oh right, he's only guesting, right?
He's only a guest at he guested the album, so then he wasn't permanent, so then we spent another year trying to find somebody, and then obviously the added problem of finding singers now is if you find someone, you can't audition them because you can't see anybody.
It's got to be the hardest position to fill as well. Like it's because it's like the personality of the band, isn't it? Like it's the first thing you kind of recognise normally, unless you're a musician. It's like the first thing you recognise is the singer's voice normally. There's
I think, and that's what like I've been saying to the guys, is that I think it's more important that we find somebody who doesn't necessarily, can't necessarily do absolutely everything that Chris did, but with whatever they do, they have some kind of distinguishable character to their voice, that just like where you hear them and you're like, oh, that's a cool voice, as opposed to like someone who can maybe like, sing super high and super low and do the growls, but maybe doesn't really have that much of or that interesting of a voice. So I think that's sort of at least where my head's been at, that like I'd rather we have somebody who's just more like interesting, as opposed to trying to be like, oh, he's going to do absolutely everything, because we've also been discussing not even finding someone who can necessarily scream, because I've always been able to do that, and I've progressed in doing that over the years. So it might be that I take on that role in the vocals, that I do just more of the screaming and the growling, and then that kind of frees up who can join the band if they're just like, I'm just like a singer, I can put some grit on, but I don't do the whole like growling, screaming thing. So that might help it as well.
That'll certainly make it easier, I would have thought, to find someone, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. So we're just keeping open-minded that way.
There you go. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're a singer who wants to be in the most insane prog metal band in the entire country, like properly, not even joking, like mental.
I mean, I think Haken takes the
I don't know about
the
that,
mantle
mate.
with that. I mean, if you're talking mental prog, I mean,
I will relent them. Second most mental prog band in the UK.
Okay,
that's quite the accolade, though.
Well, I appreciate it.
You don't do the 80s stuff, though. You do more of the sort of full-on, let's just go nuts, brutal stuff. Rather, Haken doesn't really ever go that brutal. Like it tends to be.
No, I mean their last two records have been getting heavier, but
they have, yes.
But the problem is vocals.
There's that bit on the Architect, and he does a growl, and it just.
Well, that's the guy from the singer from Leprous. Doing the growl bit in the middle, and
I did not know that.
He's got an amazing voice. What, like his clean voice is like incredible.
Is that the lead singer from Leprous?
I think so.
Yeah. I was watching them earlier. Actually, he's phenomenal. That singer.
Because I saw them live. Who else was on that gig? It was. They might have been
Lawrence is in
opening.
chat and he says, "Sign me up. We found your singer. He's
Who said that?
Great.
Lawrence.
Oh, okay.
He's in. That's it. Done. You heard it here first. There we
Lawrence,
go.
you've saved my life. Like
He can do the gutturals. That might be about it.
But yeah, I saw Leprous live, and it might have been opening for Haken. Actually, I don't think it was. It was a gig at the Fleece, and I remember I'd heard a bit of them, and then seeing them live, and I was like, he sounds exactly like the record. But yeah, I don't think he does much screaming anymore. So maybe and he has that kind of more of that black metal tinge, that kind of more raspy, higher end
stuff. Yeah.
So if you're not a fan of that, I can understand why people. Yeah, that bit in the Architect where I know a few people were just like,
black
oh.
metal.
Right.
I like black metal. I love it. One of my favorite bands is Immortal, and I love Immortal like with a passion. But like that bit, I absolutely love that album. I love that song. I really love that song. It's just the chorus in that is just amazing.
Yeah. Like, it's like I love how like the chucker on the guitar is. I bet they're thinking it's like a shotgun. Like I think that's what the imagery must have been when they did that part. Because it's great.
Good song. But speaking of like imagery and influence and stuff, obviously you've been playing guitar an awful long time, and you're pretty. Let's not beat around the bush. You're not bad, are you? At guitar.
I try.
From Callum, that's
high
a sterling
praise from
review.
Callum.
I don't do any. It's like when you're Iron Maiden, then you can have you're a good guitarist. When you're like sort of just Ian. I mean you're good. Let's be honest. You're not amazing.
He's taking it back now. There we go. That was it.
There
He's climbing down. He's climbing down.
There you go. Back to normal again. I tell it to Jake and everything as well. Jake, rubbish drummer. Max, awful. Terrible.
Just like Jake, what are you doing?
Terrible. What the hell are you doing, mate? Influences though, like obviously we've met each other like sporadically, and obviously we hung out a little bit, but not like sat down and chatted. What are your influences, man? Like obviously you've got this really like unique style. Like I can't hear other guitarists in your style very easily. I can pick up little bits, but I can't hear like an overarching influence in your style. So just curious what influenced you? What are your main influences?
That's a massive compliment because I've ripped everybody off. But I guess it's one of those things. If you rip enough people off, like if you only rip two players off, it'll come across like it's really obvious.
Yeah.
But if you do it with like everything you've ever heard and take little bits and kind of mash it all together, that's kind of what everybody does.
That's what music is, right?
Basically, that's what at least that's what I thought. And it's changed over the years, and it's gone through developments. But I mean, as to where it's arrived now, the first guys, it was like Kirk Hammett and Angus Young, if you're talking lead players, so like pentatonic kind of blues based guys, and then, but obviously Hetfield and rhythm wise, like my foundation was all the thrash guys, so Hetfield, the guys in Slayer, Mustaine, Anthrax, that were all just solid, chunky rhythm with a speed side. And then Megadeth was when I think like a little more color started to get interjected into my playing, because like the riffing was way more intense, so like or at least like way more intricate. It wasn't just all power chords. It was a lot more like dancing around scales, and then obviously all the players in Megadeth. So Chris Poland, Marty Freeman, those two. I mean, Marty Freeman initially was like huge for me. So like all his kind of I'm hearing all these notes from like those aren't in the pentatonic scale. like what is all that? And I remember like not really know, like I can listen to my old solos and my demos, and I was like trying so hard to get in as many like wrong notes as I could and make them sound good. And like now it wasn't, I can hear it wasn't done very tastefully, but it was like, it's just development. But after that, I still kind of hold Dimebag as my number one, because he was kind of just, at least as a metal player, the most kind of full packaged, well-rounded player, just from like just being tight rhythm, like great leads, but the kind of the feel of it all was like not regimented in a way where it was like like soulless, and where like it was all clean and tight, but
he's
it
just
had
like
this attitude
he's just
to it.
effortless, wasn't he? Just completely effortless, and he could do it completely half cut as well, like completely gone every time.
I heard a story of somebody went to see him when he was in Damage Plan, and like he obviously he had his stacked amps, and I think it was like four across, and there was shots along the whole like wall of stacks, and he went through every one of them through the course of the gig. I think like halfway through the shots, he was when his guitar solo was, and he's like, and he'd probably been drinking before that.
I would have thought so.
I'm in two halves about that, because one side of me is like, that's so cool. The other half of me is like, that's worrying to be able to drink that much and still play. I'm like, that's like, that's going to be problematic in a couple of years.
Someone's pickled their insides. Yeah.
So not to like, put a downer on it, but like I have sometimes thought like, poor, like that's
there's definitely like a limited time span on doing that stuff. Like
it's a running trait, isn't it? Like,
I mean, I say that, but Lemmy did it till he was like 70 something, so it means nothing.
Yeah, that's true.
It means nothing.
I'd say you probably got quite lucky with the amount that he drank. To be fair,
and Ozzy's still going, so
it's true. Yeah, they're all sticking around, aren't they? So they're all. No, it's not just the alcohol; it's everything else they're doing, isn't it? The thing is, it's probably countering itself out. Like, so much alcohol and so many drugs, they're like, oh, it's just going to break it, and actually it goes away.
Any doctors in chat? Is that how medicine works? Can we get confirmation?
Yes, it is. I'm telling them now.
I think we'll go
before
with
they
that.
answer. Yes, it is.
Yes, I'm getting a yes. That is it. Right. Okay. Confirmed.
The thing is,
we're not endorsing.
We're not endorsing one trying to bring that many cabs to a gig anymore, and because
especially that,
because if you don't bring that many cabs, you won't do that many shots on stage.
Here's the thing, though, Ian. You bring 2 cabs, though, don't you?
Yes, I do. I've got 2 1x12s now, though. So,
really? Oh, you downsized? Because you were using zero as well, weren't you?
So I've just downsized, and like I've basically I've still got my 2x12. I've just split it in half. Not literally. I've still got the old one there, but just chomped it. But I do bring 2, because I'm the whole stereo rig guy now.
Like Petrucci, like the
yes,
Okay.
What's a band that? Who's the band that we supported that did that back in the day, Toby? Can you remember?
It was Enemy Rain from
that
America.
Was Enemy Rain. Yeah,
they had two.
Yeah.
They had 2 6505, one on each side with a cab, and he was just stereo. Yeah, he was just with one guitarist, just stereoing it.
But it makes sense. It's a good way of getting one guitar to sound
huge.
Big.
Sounded absolutely huge.
So how come you don't went to 1x12? Is that because you're running your in-ears then? And just going direct?
I haven't used in-ears on stage yet. I got my in-ears in lockdown, and that was because when things had opened up again, the band went down for a little jam, and I was attempting to sing, and I just couldn't hear myself, and I was just like, I'm so done with this.
Was that over Jake's drums by any chance?
Well, yeah, but I mean, it was everything. I mean, like I turn up loud. I mean. But to be honest, even with a drummer who doesn't play that loud, it's almost impossible to get the PA turned up enough, and also you shouldn't be turning it up that loud. And I was just like, I'm done not being able to hear my vocals more than anything else. I can kind of be okay if I can't hear my guitar that well, because I've been playing long enough, but I'm not as experienced of a singer. So, but the 1x12 thing was kind of practical. I just thought it'll free up space, because I was bringing a 2x12 and then like borrowing somebody's 4x12. In fact, I remember at Bloodstock when we played, I borrowed your 4x12.
Yeah.
Now you want to know what's really funny. So I bought a little Magnum 44 power amp pedal to power that cab, and it broke before the show.
Really?
Of course.
So, because I remember being on stage and just like playing, and the sound coming out of the 4x12 was like, and I was just like,
so it's fucked.
What?
Right.
And I knew, I was like, it's not the cab. I mean, like, it's like the pedal's not even turned up that loud. I was like, no, I haven't blown the cab up, but And then afterwards was like when we got back and I plugged the pedal in at home and was just like, oh my God. Luckily, our sound guy, he ended up just using the 2x12, which sounded better, but the 2x12 was EQ'd differently. Like I was doing it where like I had like a scoop sound going to the 4x12 and then a really like mid-heavy sound on the 2x12 for all the effects and stuff. Okay. And so I don't do that. I don't do it that way anymore because that was when I was doing like wet, dry, wet. Whereas now I just do a left and right. And so I listen back to that footage and it's just like the guitar tones like just all mids and I'm just like, oh God.
That's the problem because I had the same I think the first big gig I ever played was with Apocalyptica. And basically my old amp, it just decided, me and Toby were talking about this the other day actually. We had Powerballs. I used to have a Powerball and I don't have it anymore. I sold it. But it had a really dodgy effects loop. So when we played Apocalyptic, it was the first big show, and I was like shaking, all excited. And then my pedals didn't work, and then obviously you don't have time to sort it out because same with Bloodstock as well. You just don't have time to sort these things out because you're on like such a strict turnover. Yeah, you can't problem solve it.
I think we realised it's like a Powerball fault. That like the effects loop intermittently decides to turn itself on and off at different random times, and it can be fine for a year, and then suddenly it can just decide that it wants to pick a moment and just not work.
And that moment will be as you're just about to play the first note of your set after sound check.
You just do the little test on your guitar before you start, and it's
that's fine. And it's like, I'm off, lads. Have a good gig. I think.
Yeah, but
okay.
Speaking of in-ears, me and Chris have just got, because I know Chris has been using them, but I've got my first ever set coming now. I jammed with Max a few months ago, back when we weren't locked down. And he lent me his in-ears. I was like, right. This is life-changing.
Yeah.
Because it's just because I could, obviously Jake is such a loud drummer, and I just don't. I've blown up an amp trying to catch up with Jake. Like I blew up one of my amps. It's like
I did that. Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah, I've got the speakers on the shelf over there. Yeah, he's an Axe Effects, but I was using a power amp and a cab, and I blew up my creambacks.
Oh fuck!
Yeah. Jake needs to stop playing drums so hard.
I told him that actually. I'll say this online. Like I told him because he was like, "Oh, I want my drums to sound a certain way." I was like, they'll sound that way if you hit just a little less hard, because when you hit a drum that hard, it's like it can't move, so it can't resonate because the skin will just go like. Whereas if you hit it a little bit softer, it will move a bit more. But yeah.
Jake.
I also that's how he plays.
It's kind
drums,
of his kind of his signature sound, though, isn't it? That how hard he does hit the drums, like it gives it kind of gives it that tightness almost that you can't get away from the drums.
Like a drummer that smashed the shit out of it, and it's just like it's all consistent, and you're like, oh okay, yeah, we're gonna get some good stems here. Not someone that comes in and it's like, right, okay.
I tell you, there's nothing worse.
Can you hit a bit harder, please?
The drummer's just doing this and feathering the drums. It's like, you're a drummer. You need to hit hard.
You got to smack it. Coming from like back in like my college days and stuff like that, with a lot of people that weren't drummers, to be fair, but like people that could hold a beat. And you'd have like bluesy stuff and jazzy stuff, and they're all kind of like chilling out, and I'd just get on there and break the fucking thing. I'd be like. It's not my fault. It's a drum kit. Come on.
Does Jake go through a lot of sticks by any chance?
Oh my lord! I mean, like he's showing up to a gig and he's like, "I've only got a pair."
Yeah. He does that at practices as well. Though he does when I jam with him. He's like, "Oh,
so he plays like one song and then
gone." And I'm just like, but at a gig, and I'm just like, okay, what's going to happen when they break? And he's like,
I got to play with my hand.
It's kind of just like, don't know. And I'm like, well, don't break them. Get some spares.
Bring more. Yeah. I always turn up with at least like 4 pairs of sticks just in case, because you never know.
At least, yeah.
I'm sure I've done that before.
Yeah.
I've broken a stick halfway through and then gone to reach for another one, realizing I don't have any more, and then of just being like, well, I guess we're done. Or like just playing with like a quarter of a stick or something, like destroying my hands in the process. But yeah, don't make that mistake these days.
No, you can't. I mean, like, yeah, like I attribute to like if I brought 2 picks to a gig, it's like, what am I gonna do when the first one goes flying out my hand and then the second one goes flying out my hand? I'm like, well, I can't fingerstyle these gallops, I can't.
Yeah.
How come you've gone with Axe Effects? Because you've been using Axe Effects for like you're one of the first people I know like who was using Axe Effects like properly. Because I remember getting one. You already had one when I got one years ago.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
How come you went with Axe Effects rather than amps and stuff like that?
It was kind of a budget thing where
I
had too much budget.
No, because I had to get like I know it sounds silly, but like it was more cost effective to get an Axe Effects because I was looking at a Mark V amplifier at the time.
Yeah, sure.
And they were like $3,000 just for a head.
Yeah.
And an Axe
then a
Effects
cab,
was here's the thing, yeah. So I had to get a cab and a power, and I also did need some effects like delay and all that stuff, and I was like, well, an Axe Effects is at the time was $2,000, and I was like, that will leave me enough to get a power amp and a cab, and so that was the main reason, and also it just means like, well, and then you've got the selection of all these different amps, like you're not just limited to that Mark sound if that's not what you want, if so that was the main reason I did it. Like I know it sounds silly to say like it was budgetary reasons, but it really was. It was like
this is it, isn't it?
Like
as soon as you said Mark V, I was like, I understand.
Yeah.
I had one briefly.
Well, I get it. It's like because I'm I'm a fucking Valve twat, and I make this very clear. Like I'm like Valve guy through and through. Like valves, tubes. No, because because unlike you're like super versatile. Endeavour playing like all sorts of stuff. You go through different moods and different stuff, so it makes sense. Because I get that. Because you can just like, I don't want to use a 5150 for this rhythm section. I want to use something a bit more less aggressive, perhaps. Whilst I just like to have one sound and just leave it that way. So I just whatever it is, set the sound and I just leave it because I can't. Because I had the Axe Effects and I was getting so.
I'm a simple man.
I am simple. This is why I like a box with everything in. I just have to do anything then. I just plug it in and it just does it. It's done.
Yeah.
But like when I had my Axe Effects, I just spent ages tweaking and twiddling, and I just got lost in it, and I could never get a sound I ended up being happy with. I ended up being too much of a tinkerer, which I like to just set and leave it, So
yeah, I mean, I'd rather do that, but it's and like I only have 4 sounds that I use. Really only 3 that during the course of the gig. The other reason it's so useful is like how you can wire things to have like where the delays spill over between the channels, and even things like being able to because talking about my pedal board, having expression pedals where you're controlling the amount of signal you're putting into a delay, and so like the root of the sound is actually quite basic. I've got a low gain, I've got a main rhythm, and then I've got a lead channel. That's it. But then it's all about manipulating the delays and reverbs and also like the way because I do a stereo thing, I'll run the right side of the signal out of the Axe Effects and into a TC Electronic Mimic pedal, which is like a doubler pedal, and then I'll run it back in to the Axe Effects, and then that gets sent to the power amp, so that the right side of the signal is like your second guitarist, if you will. So
there's like a slight delay then, is there? So you have your rhythm, and then one slightly behind, or like a
like it's it's the Mimic pedal. It's a combination of it does like it delays the signal, but then it sort of adds inconsistencies to different parts of it. In the I don't really know exactly what it does, but it's just it's an advanced doubler effect. So yeah, I'm sure delay is involved in it, but it doesn't. It's not just that; it does other things, and but that's what Petrucci uses it now. And
he's
because
used TC for quite a while, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean he's got the signature Dreamscape like modulation pedal as well. But the other thing with the Axe Effects is that I can have like on my lead tone, I don't have the mimic pedal engaged because I actually want that to be more not mono, but like I want the rhythms to be like really wide and then the leads to kind of come in a bit to like it would on a record.
Sure.
So it'd be cool to have like, and this is the thing, I started thinking like, oh, if I had two of them and I could MIDI engage them and have one a little less wide and like so it's still wide, but you know, I haven't gone down that road, at least not yet.
That's that sounds like a lot of headaches and fun all together.
Yeah, I mean, my rack, it's also like we were talking about problems having live. Because I use analog pedals as well, I've got like a couple of A/B boxes in the rack, which one's for like it's not an A/B box, it's like a 2-in. It's a dual input pedal, so I can switch which input it is in case my wireless goes down.
Oh,
so if my wireless goes down, I just hit the button and plug in a 1/4 inch, and then I'm okay to go. And it's the same with the pedal board. If something goes wrong with the pedal board, I can hit a button, and it will bypass the pedal board and go straight into the rack. So
Okay.
I've got those things in place because I'm like, as you guys know, when you're playing, you can't be just unplugging and checking where the problem is. You just need to be able to go like out, you know, get it out of the equation. So
fix.
Yeah, the fix button. Yeah. If only.
No, that's
And that's the thing with tube amps as well, though, isn't it? It's like if my tube amp goes. So
that's the thing.
Chris has corrupted me because I sold my XFX a few years ago, right? I was like, I'm never doing digital again. And since I've joined Awake by Design again, I've got a Helix. So I've just started using a Helix, but I'm still using my valve amp. So I'm using my Helix as my like Petrucci does. Like he has this valve amp sound, and then he uses his pedals for effects, or the XFX for effects. I'm kind of doing that, but I've also got it. I wanted the Helix as well, so I could, if we did do any flying gigs. So Toby's going to be getting a Helix, and it's just ended up we're going to go with Helixes.
Helixes are great. They sound. Whenever I've heard them used, they sound really good.
Yeah, I'm really happy with it. Like in terms of because the XFX I just found I got lost in it. I just found it got too complicated. I was like, I can't find a tone, and then dialing it in. And I had the same with Kemper. I was like, I don't like any of the stock tones on a Kemper, so I have to profile amps. I can't be asked to do that. With the Helix, I just sat with it for an hour, and I was like, oh, I've got a good sound. You know, so it didn't.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I use my own IRs. I use my Zilla, an IR of my Zilla.
Oh, you got an IR of your Zilla. That's cool. Because I got the what was it, the Get Good Drums Zilla pack for like studio stuff.
Yeah, I've got that as well. Yeah,
which is really cool.
It's really good.
I've considered like getting a valve head for the studio, to maybe just get a little bit more of an authentic sound. But live, because also like if I was to do the stereo thing live, I'd need two heads to do it. Like, because especially if you're running that mark sound where the graphic EQ is affecting the power amp stage, I can't just have one head and then run the effects loop out and then into a power amp, because the power amp sound will be completely different. So you need two heads to do it. I'm just like, well, you know, if I was getting like, you know, I would want a JP2C nowadays, and I'm like, well, that's $6,000 for two heads, you know. I'm like, I mean, I'm not if I'm gonna spend that much money on a head, I'm gonna do it for the studio as well, because I'm just like, I don't want it to break. And yeah,
exactly.
Well, that's what I'm going to do with my Engels. I think they're going to be. I don't know, because I've got a Driftwood. I've got a working with Driftwood.
Oh, cool! Right. I haven't played those.
Welcome to. Well, you know, when things ease up a bit, you're welcome to we'll bring it around sometime, have a listen, and you can, you know, check it out.
I was really impressed with it. It sounds genuinely fantastic.
Yeah, I'm really happy with it. And it's just a bit smaller as well, so hence it's a smaller.
Yeah, they are a bit smaller, aren't they? What's it comparable to? Like, is it closer to a Marshall or a 5150 kind of thing? Or?
Yeah, it's like a.
It kind of is closer to a Marshall, isn't it? As far as like that, slightly warmer tone than like a PV.
It's not as clinical it's not as spiky as a 5150. I think it's got some of the sort of the elements of it, but I think it's closer to a very hot Marshall. And because it's got a tube screamer built into it, it just pushes it nicely.
Yeah. It seems to be the thing. Yeah, it seems to be the thing nowadays is everybody's trying to go back to more the Marshall thing. I think like with brands like Friedman and even like the Victory stuff, it seems to be going more like, let's use the Marshall sound as a bass and then just try and beef that up.
Yeah.
Which you would think a 5150 was, because obviously Eddie Van Halen was a Marshall guy basically until I think he was using Soldanas as well. But it's kind of funny how different the 5150 sounded to his Marshall sound. Which is kind of interesting. But yeah, it seems to be like everybody's on the Marshall thing now. Even bands like Periphery, who are, you know, in the gent scene, like they started kind of at times experimenting. Let's go for that old school kind of Marshall bass sound, but try and get something modern out of it.
Yeah. Well, like because I built my tone. I basically when I sat down with the Helix, I used my Driftwood as kind of a bass. So I had them A/B. So I had my Helix in my earphones, I had the Helix in my earphones. So I was just playing them. I was like saying, okay, then tweaking the Helix, and I used a Friedman. So the model in the Helix I used that sounded closest to the Driftwood was a Friedman with a tube screamer and a bit of EQ on it.
Right.
And it got it pretty close. I think it's not exact, but it's pretty close. So we've set that up. So when Toby gets his Helix sorted out, he's going to be. I don't assume we might tweak it a little bit more, but I think that's going to be the backbone of the band's sound. I think now, isn't it?
Yeah.
To an extent.
Yeah, sure. Well, we loaded it up for some project we were working on recently, and hearing the two guitars together was kind of like they sound like the same thing. So that was a really good thing to hear from the Helix being set
sounds
up
like the
that way.
same band.
Yeah, that was really cool.
yeah. I think
that's a good start. Yeah. You're not kind of like someone's got like a like a Mesa Mark IV and someone's rocked up with like a Line 6 Spider. You know, it's definitely along the same lines, because we all know bands that have sounded like that before.
Yeah.
This is it. It's just like it's so hard because obviously Ian, you don't have to worry too much about that because I suppose you do because you've got a line you got to get with the bassist and everything, but you've never. Have you ever played in a band with two guitarists? We always just. I mean, you obviously did. Endeavour, Onslaught had two guitarists, didn't it?
Yeah. It was and we would kind of keep our tones. I mean, we kind of naturally sort of went for the same thing. It was just like super gained up, you know,
thrash,
thrashy sound. It was like, I mean, Nige was always the one, like he was just never happy. I mean, nobody's ever happy with their tone, but he was just like. He was never happy with his tone, but oh my god, I mean, he was running the gain so high. It was like, I mean, it was fun to play when I would jam on it. I was like, oh, this is just so easy. But, yeah, for whatever reason, it kind of naturally went for the same thing. Maybe my sound had a little bit more mid in it, just because of the lead thing. But then again, I had lead patches, so. Because I'm a fan of the whole scooped tone, but I realize, you know, it doesn't necessarily cut through that well if you scoop it too much.
Yeah. I've started scooping a bit more. So my Driftwood's scooped. And it's nervous. I usually push the mids quite heavily. It's like when I was using my Anglers, I'd push the mids quite heavily. This is becoming incredibly nerdy for people listening, sorry. But like, I just push the mids quite heavily and then have this really forward sound. But with the Driftwood, I'm finding I'm sort of backing off the mids a bit more and having it more scooped. And then I'm using my Helix to boost the mids for leads and stuff. Seems to be nice, sort of a nice balance between, because then that's
a good way to do it.
Well, the tone I've set up with the Helix for the other rhythm guitar, I've put more mids in, so it's kind of giving it that breadth of sound.
Cool.
So I don't know. This is
it's still quite different to any sound you've had before, though. Like in a good way.
Yeah, I mean, I've always used Engels. That's the thing. I've used Engels. I mean, I got that Powerball when I was 21, I think, something like that. I wasn't old. So old now though.
I'm old.
But like, I've always. This is why I wanted. When I last year. This is so basically my Savage. This is the amp that blew when I was playing with Jake, right? Because I was playing with Jake and I don't think I had the Savage plugged in properly and it blew a tube.
Right.
So since that happened, I only had it a year and it's had a few problems. And Ollie, the other guitarist in Metaprism, has had problems with his Savage as well. So I think we had a bit of a wonky batch because they were the first ones because we were endorsed. We are endorsed technically still.
Right.
We got them really early. But I think it was a bit of a wonky batch because I've had a few problems with it. And since the problems, I've been like, I fall out of love with it as much as it's a crushing amp. It's insane. Yeah. I just haven't fallen in love with it like I did with my old Engel. So I thought, I'm going to try something different. I've always had an Engel sound. I want to try something completely different now. I want to go for something a bit more, like contemporary, a bit more modern. So Ollie was talking about Driftwood. So I was like, Driftwood, yeah, that's really cool. contacted Marek, the guy who owns Driftwood. It's like, I'm in a band. Would you give me a discount? Yeah, right.
Sorted.
So, yeah,
Lads.
So he sent me a Mini Nightmare. I wanted a smaller amp, so I wanted a 50 watt amp for the tighter rhythm, because I'm doing mainly rhythms, and I want a really tight rhythm. I don't like flubby rhythms, and I've always had 120 watt with the Savage. They're not flubby, but you have to really tighten them up with a tube screamer and stuff. Whilst the Driftwood,
yeah, they're just a bit more kind of open. So
yeah,
I get what you mean. Like I spoke to actually, I don't know if I spoke to him about this, but I had a lesson with Vog from Decapitated a couple months ago. We were just we nerded out in gear, and he was talking about because he was using like the 100 watt EVHs, and he went down to the 50 watts after that because he was just like it just focused the sound a little bit more. And actually we're like, yeah, and I'm a fan of that, like, because it's like even though I'm the only guitarist in Endeavour, I would probably still want something to be a bit more focused, because it's, well, why wouldn't you? I think when you're doing tight stuff, because like if you're doing a little bit more like stuff where you don't have like lots of like stops and starts and that kind of thing, and it's just big sounding stuff, you can probably afford to go with a 100 watt thing, because you don't need it to react as quickly, I think is the thing. Sure. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, it's just something new as well, something different. I've really fallen in love with it, like properly. I think I'm gonna stick with these guys for a while, because it's just a really nice sounding amp, really natural, really easy to play. It's not as much gain as the Engels. It's not got as much gain, so which I quite like, actually, because the
more clarity though, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's got that more articulate and everything. I know this is just like super giggy, nerdy, geary stuff, but it's not it. I did say, but like, it's just nice, and I've just So when I've coupled it with the Helix, it's just worked. It's really good. Really happy with my little rig. So, but we've got to speak about this pedalboard though, man. We need to speak about it. Why? So
my pedalboards.
See, you've got you're running your Axe effects, but you've got hundreds of analog pedals effectively on a pedal board. I mean, obviously not hundreds, but there's a lot.
Hundreds.
Yeah. Let me just see if I can. It's just around the corner. Let me just see if I can get it in frame. Bear with me 1 second.
For those of you who aren't able to watch this, you need to try and check out the Twitch stream, because this is going to blow your face, as well as obviously seeing Ian's glorious hair. Because, I mean, between Toby and Ian, I mean, that's a lot of nice hair going on this podcast right now, which you can't see if you're listening. I've covered my shameful hair with a hat.
Come and tune in. Watch it on YouTube. You can see everyone's hair in its glorious length and
when we're playing live
abundance.
Again. I'll try and hold it up, but...
Wait, look at
this. Oh my god.
That's the rough line. The foot switch is on right now.
It's like, this isn't even the full thing. It's just...
Here's some of it.
Here's some of this pedal board.
Yeah, the foot switch is actually under my desk, because I took out the foot switch.
How many wah pedals were on that?
I saw a whammy. Is that the Digitech?
There's 2 wah pedals, 1 whammy, and 2 expression pedals.
Okay, is that the Dimebag wah pedal I saw on there?
Yeah, it's that one.
Yeah.
The reason there's 2 wah pedals is because I got that Dime wah, like, I can't remember, year and a half, maybe 2 years ago now, and because I'd always wanted one, from when I was a teenager, and I saw a good deal on one, and I got it, and then I started thinking about, because I got a little bit like, I was always just using a foot switch, and for the Axe effects, and I just started feeling a bit like, I kind of miss seeing those colorful, pretty things on the floor,
That's it, isn't it?
And so and it just suddenly, it's funny, just one rehearsal, I walked in with this pedal board, and all the guys were just like, Ian, what are you doing? I was like, I wanted to use my pedals again. And they're like, why? And I was just like, because they're pretty. And
there's something very tactile about it, isn't there? That click of the pedal, and
well, that, and also like, it's just because I started having like not falling out of love with playing live, but I was getting so bogged down with like playing things right, and just and I realized I'd forgotten like what it felt like to just play guitar when I was a teenager. And I thought, well, what did you used to have when you were a teenager? I was like, yeah, well, you used to have your pedal board with your EBH Phase 90 and your whammy pedal and that stuff, and you used to get
Zoom
joy
606.
out of that. Yeah, I never had a Zoom.
Oh, you're lucky.
I did.
Oh,
I had a
shit.
few Zooms.
Oh, I did as well.
Zoom.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
in the bloody cupboard back
Oh,
there.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Seems to work.
it's funny that I ended up with an Axe Effects, because very early on I was very anti multi-effects things, because I was like, I want to be able to pick and choose which bits I want, and because I remember, like, my mom would be like, oh no, but you can get this big all-in-one thing and it can do everything, and then you won't have to wait if you want to use anything. And I was like, no, I'm gonna do it like pick and choose. But yeah, so like I ended up like getting that dime wah pedal, and then I was like, well, I already had a Crybaby, but it's one that we don't make anymore actually, and I just thought, well, what if you whack that on the board and change the range selector so you can use it on riffs? And I call it like a sub wah, so it's like it's set really low, so I'll kick it in on just little notes here and there. Like we've got a song called Betrayal of Life, and on one of the bends I'll just go wow, and like you can feel the room kind of go whoa, like do that. And
Nice.
So just stuff like that, and I'm just like, that's just fun, to do. And then I've got
awesome.
the dime one set is like just a lead wah. But the last thing I got was a Electro Harmonix bass balls. Which is it's a bass pedal, but it's the one I heard about it. It's the one Mick Thompson uses at the beginning of Disaster Piece.
Yeah.
So that at the beginning of that song, it's that pedal. And I saw it on Facebook Marketplace for like 30 quid, and I was like, mine, like it's going on the board. And
bucket.
No idea what I'm going to use it for. But the other thing was, I just thought having these pedals there, I was just like, they might inspire stuff. Now that they're there, so like I might start like incorporating, trying to use a whammy pedal on a riff, and because I've always wanted to do that, and I just, but because it hasn't been on the board for so long, I've never thought to. But
yeah, I suppose with an Endeavour being in quite an experimental band, because I think I can imagine I get that, because I think. Cause I'm not a pedal guy, really. I always like to keep. I'm super. I like stuff that's simple. I think Toby, you're the same.
I've always been the same. Yeah.
Yeah, simple.
Literally, like I did own a wah pedal years ago, but I never really.
I can't imagine you using it.
Yeah, I never really used it that much, to be honest. It's just like
I think I had more pedals than you as a drummer.
yeah, it's true. I literally.
I got a Crybaby.
I have like I just had the Powerball with like the Maxon and the noise gate, the second noise gate decimator going into it, and
classic.
Yeah, and just a delay pedal. Literally, maybe like a reverb, barely anything really. Like just, and then like the amp pedal basically for like clean and distortion and stuff. But
I think it's always just like the same simple rigs.
Some guitar, it's like whatever you like, though, isn't it? If you love that kind of experimentation and kind of loads of pedals and stuff, like I totally get that. It's just I kind of I've always just preferred it kind of simple, I guess.
Yeah, and I think
I love about guitar and stuff.
If I was in a band where there was a second guitarist, I'd probably be less inclined to do it, because you could play more just with what you can do between the two players. But I think it just came to a point where I'm always trying to think of ways to like enrich what it is I can do in the band, whether that if that means just adding any sound that can make it more interesting beyond what I'm just playing, and also because it's just like, as stereo as I can make it and as interesting as I can make the parts, it's like, whacking a baser is just going to do something to a part that you can't really do any other way. And so I probably would have kept it more simple if there's two guitarists. However, I brought this up with Jake, and I said, you have to go look at Vernon Reid from Living Colour's Rig Rundown. His pedal board is literally like 180. It is ridiculous, and it's like it's stacked up, and there's like, you know, like, oh no, this pedal board only goes to this amp, and then like this synthesizer thing goes to the PA, and there's like a foot switch for that half of the pedal board, and it's
you
like,
can imagine the
insane.
sound man when he comes in with it, just like having a fit.
I mean, the sound guy probably still only
crying.
has to use like 3 mics, like, okay, on these 3 speakers, so like, it's more like his
tech is going to be crying. Yeah. It's just like, why?
But the thing is,
see
he's
this
like, I
Marshall
use it
combo?
all. He's like, I use this all in the course of 1 gig. Like, it's not just for show. He's like, I use all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
So when people
knock
say
it, man.
about to drummers as well, don't they? About like, oh, why have you got this huge kit? Surely you can't use all of it. I'm like, well, if you've got it, you probably will. To be honest, it's just the transporting it around the country and setting it up in a small pub that's usually what puts people off. But, having the stage space and the ability to have a kit that large, anyone would do it. Of course they would. Like, you ask some of the drummers that have got these big kits why they have such big kits, and usually the answer is, I didn't have to pay for it, and I don't have to set it up. So, yeah, I would be exactly the same in that sort of situation, I think.
Fair reason. I mean, if I could get
not that my kit's small, but
so your
it's not huge.
It's fairly modest, isn't it? It's not stupid. It's got
no.
You've got 4. Is it 4? You got 4 toms, haven't you?
4 toms. Yeah. 2 up, 2 down. Left and right, split down the middle. 1 bass drum because I got double pedal. You know, and what 2. About 8-9 cymbals, something like that. So
that's fine.
Exactly. It's not too big. It's not too small. I've kind of found a happy medium of something I don't mind moving around wherever, and I can set up fairly quickly. I don't bring like the octobons and stuff with me and all that kind of stuff when we're playing, but they go up in the studio.
You should definitely bring
or the cowbell, or the tambourine,
you need to
the tambourine, and the chimes,
No,
gotta have some
gong.
Gong.
Yeah. I did manage to record some drums in a studio a couple of years ago where he had all that stuff. There was timpani involved. There was a gong. It was just fun. Like,
nice.
All of it came out sounding trash, and we couldn't use a lot of it, but it was just a fun day. Like, it was brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah. I almost like, I'm like the guy where like, if a kit is any smaller than that, I'm like, what's going on there? You know, like when it's smaller than that, because I'm just like, why don't you want more stuff? You know.
Yeah, I do have this conversation with the drummers sometimes, and I think a lot of it comes down to if you're heavily groove based for what you play, you don't need like the kind of different stuff. So if you're doing a shitload of fucking beating down on the snare and that's most of your bread and butter, fair enough. Or if you're in a power metal band, you're going to need 84 toms. I mean, there's just no way around that.
Yeah.
Yeah. However long the longest fill is on the album, that's how many toms you need. Like, you can't double it up on more than 1 tom. That's
it's literally a single on 1 tom. Just like it's like the invisible drum kit, the Rowan Atkinson invisible drum kit. Yeah.
Oh, it's incredible.
So you obviously using a pedal board.
Yeah.
You've got in-ear monitors. Are you thinking about going having because what we're going to be doing is going to be having MIDI controlling. So basically, we're going to leave our helixes in the rack, and then it's just going to be just automated. Are you going to kind of go with the click track thing live? Because I know you don't at the moment, do you?
No, it's always been a discussion point.
I've seen the Bloodstock video, and Jake plays it so fast.
we tap tempoed it. He played it. One song 20 BPM faster than the album version.
There's a drum fill at the start because I remember hearing the recording.
It starts with drums.
It's like it's fairly, it's a pretty cool drum fill, but it's not particularly fast. And I see the Bloodstock one. It's like, that's not supposed to be like that.
That's the adrenaline.
I mean, yeah. He said, "Oh, I didn't even know that I'd played it that much faster." He was just so into it.
Sometimes the faster you play it, it feels slow. So I've come off stage before, like before we played to Click, and I was like, oh, sorry guys, I think I've played that one a bit slowly, and they're just like, the fuck are you talking about? That was twice the speed of the album track. You need to slow this down. I'm like, oh shit, sorry. Or like when we made the transition to playing 2-click, I would be like, this is wrong. This can't be the speed that we're supposed to play at. I'm like, right, that's okay, that's in time, right? Until you get used to that, I suppose it's such a weird sensation.
Yeah, I mean, something we looked into that was, but you need because I only have like Ableton Lite, which I don't use, but with the full version of Ableton, they have this like thing in it where you can, so you set up your click track, but then you can feed the drum audio into it, and the click will kind of move with the drummer. So like you don't need to be playing at like 98 BPM dead on. It will kind of like sway with you. And I was like, well, if we could set that up, that would be wicked, because we like the idea of like how it pushes and pulls a bit, and like that you're not gridded as such. But but then again, it's just like setting that up at a gig where it's like, I mean, that's like. One, setting up a click track is like one level of setting something up, but then to set it up to where like, oh, we got to feed the drum audio back into it, and I'm like, that's just stuff to go wrong, and we don't have a crew, and it's just like and as much like I would like to do it, because then some of the sounds could be automated, and that would make my job a lot easier. But I make do. It's fine.
I think a lot of it with us was when we lost our keyboard player, and we kind of decided not to go for a new one. We were like, well, we're going to go backing track now, so this has got to happen. But it does open a few more doors, so I just always kind of try and look as far ahead as possible with it. So I was kind of like, for like automated lighting cues and stuff like that, you can hook it into DMX systems, and and that can go as far as like pyrotechnics or CO2 and stuff like that if you really want it to, and visuals even, and that kind of stuff. And I'm like,
it's such a useful tool. Cool.
And then you just have your MIDI track running along it, and it does. It's just, if you put the work in like ahead of the gig, technically it should be a fairly straightforward gig. It never is, but the intention is there for it to be that easy. You're like, oh, we can just focus on the performance because all the changes are happening, and all the lights are taken care of, and all the sub drops and fucking orchestras coming through at the right time. The backing vocals are there. We don't have to worry about it, and our mixes are done, and then the first time we used it, that was probably the worst gig I've ever played in my life. And I was just like, nothing worked, and the racks stopped working, and that was a tough one. But lessons were learnt that day.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun, like playing songs at whatever tempo. Well, whatever tempo the drummer kind of decides to like. Especially if you're playing like death metal or thrashy stuff, like you want to push it. You want to play it as fast as you can, because maybe because on the night you've had a drink or you've kind of got that adrenaline, but you really want to push yourself when you're doing that kind of stuff, I think. But like for the stuff we're doing, I think it just doesn't. It would just kind of be sloppy, I think. If you would just kind of the tempos
won't necessarily benefit from that.
Like Metaprism's never
two sides to it, isn't there?
Yeah, Metaprism we won't ever play to click, because we want to keep it as raw as possible. Because we want to we're trying to actively get away from the symphonic. Because obviously we've got a female singer. We're trying to actively get away from the whole stereotypical, orchestra, symphonic, lots of synths and everything. We're trying to really get like, we're a proper heavy metal band, no click tracks, no backing tracks, it's all done properly live and everything. Valve amps through cabs, doing it like that, which is great. But it is a certain type of sound, and I completely agree with Toby that if we tried to do it in Awake by Design, it would just be sloppy, because it wouldn't sound. It's all about that big sound.
Oh, we know that because we've played gigs with it before. Like, okay,
there's too much. I think there's too much going on as well with having the keyboards, and especially now with more. Like, obviously, there's always been orchestration, but you've just relied on the keyboard player trying to compensate for the orchestration and do it as well as they can. But there gets to a point where a keyboard player can't really have that big of a sound, like unless they like got like four keyboards and they're.
I mean, you had keyboards in, because I know in some of your songs in Endeavour you've got some synths, haven't you? I remember seeing Chris playing a keyboard live once, actually.
Yeah,
Chris. I remember him playing a keyboard.
Yeah, and he completely ballsed it up.
As I said, I don't think he did a particularly good job of it.
No, he said he spent I spent like a couple of weeks like working on this part, and then just like completely ballsed it up. When he went to play it, and because I think so it was I think it was more just on the first record, on the song Betrayal of Life. It had this sort of piano section in the middle, and then even after the guitar solo in From the Darkest Grounds, it had this sort of synth breakdown. Because I think we were either in the mindset at the time that, you know, we did used to put it on backing track, but then nobody ever had a good system or a good way of playing it. Like at one point, Chris was like playing them off his phone, you know, into the PA, and it was just like, it just never worked well. And we you know, we were never able to send a click to our drummer, and it was just like he was having to hear it through the PA, and it was like, or his monitor. And I think the way it's gone now, I think, similar to what you were saying, Callum, about Metaprism, I think we've just started to naturally fall into this attitude of like, no, we want to keep it kind of grassroots in a way. Like the image I think of what we have of ourselves is like as if Pantera was trying to be a prog band, like have the attitude of that, but if they were trying to be prog, if that makes sense. So like not fully going down the hole of like, you know, let's automate everything and we'll do all this stuff, and you know, and then we'll be super locked in, and then maybe something for what we do will be a little bit lost. But like but I think as you said inversely about you guys, it's playing to a click and having these things being automated is beneficial to what it is you guys are trying to put across. And I know this, like I've started writing a solo album during lockdown, and that's gonna have to be on click. Because it's gonna have so many fucking layers that that I won't be able to do without live, and it's like, I mean, I want to be able to do as much of it live, you know, but we're probably gonna have to have like 3 guitar players and like a keyboard player and like some guy there with a triangle, and you know, but
it's a huge part of it, isn't it? Like a lot of like some of the larger older bands will kind of knock this kind of setup that's done, but forget that they can afford to have 90 people on stage. And it's like
Maiden knocking, I think it was Maiden who knocked backing tracks and stuff like that. It's like, well, we can't afford to have an orchestra.
Someone comes out in the middle of Rime the Ancient Mariner and plays that tape, though, don't they? Like, that's kind of the same thing, but you've paid a man to do it. So, you know, both ways work. Yeah. Absolutely. It's, it is a tough one, obviously, isn't it? So, like, you just want to get out there and play, and you don't want it to be, you know, too much of anything else. But at the end of the day, it's stuff that you've made anyway, isn't it?
You want to play.
It's not like it's not cheating.
It sound as good as it possibly can to the audience.
It's a show at the end of the day, isn't it? Yeah.
I think it's just different things work for different bands. Like so I said, Metaprism, if we tried to play to a backing track with a click, I just don't think it'd work. Whilst at Wake by Design, not playing to a backing track with a click wouldn't work either. So it's just working out what makes sense for the band. And obviously, I think if you're trying to go with, like, we're trying to go for this sort of big sound, you know, whilst obviously, as you say, you've got that kind of, we want to be Pantera but prog, and it's like, I get that. It's just you're finding your sound and you're digging your heels in and sticking to it. And I think a lot of bands could learn from that, because I think there's a lot of bands trying to follow the crowd, like, oh, we got to use a click track. You don't have to use a click track, and it's kind of you can do what works for you, and I think that's probably a better approach. Yeah. You know, not that I'm lecturing anybody.
To be honest, if we were just a straight up metal band,
but you must,
that didn't have orchestration or keyboards, I think we wouldn't play to click.
Well, yeah, like I was saying. Well, I think we had a conversation about this the other day about when we were in Engraved Disillusion. I don't think that would have ever worked with what we're trying to do here. It's just no, it's just melodeath. Yeah, like we don't need it. Yeah. So. Yeah,
and I think again, like you were saying earlier, like I think it would, like Ian was saying about Endeavour, I think it would take away some of the enjoyment of playing the songs as well if you had the click track, because you just feel a bit locked in and a bit kind of stuck when you've so used to playing these songs that you played for years, and suddenly you have to kind of just play them like regimentally to the click and stuff. And also for the drummer, for that sort of stuff, I don't think it'd be a lot of fun. Like kind of.
Or it would be a huge learning curve to kind of get used to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is. It's completely different worlds. Like, I don't think I could go back now to not doing it. But then maybe that's kind of a safety net, and I'm like, oh, I feel more comfortable knowing I'm always going to be told when I'm in time. Like, so maybe it's not an advantage. Maybe it's a bit of a disadvantage. But then you get the aspect
when you do a gig,
being in time.
When you do a gig with your covers band, it's gonna kind of be a shock to the system in the future, isn't it?
Yeah. Going back to literally playing with like no equipment, just in front of some people at a pub for a bit of fun that we do once a year, and it's just like, oh, okay, this is different. It's all about the enjoyment then, and you don't have to worry about the sound though, which is quite nice. But I'm never get used to not being able to hear anything else that anyone else is doing and just winging it. Like, it's never great from a drummer's perspective when there's no monitors. Oh, great!
I love that. No monitors.
I'll just soldier on.
Yeah. I think I remember how to play Creeping Death. It's fine. Don't worry. Like,
you've only played it like 6 billion times.
I've probably played it about 1/100th as much as Lars, which is still far more than anyone wants to ever play that song. But
so
it's good.
You said you've been doing a solo album then.
Yeah.
So is that what you've been doing in lockdown? Is it that's kind of kept your music going in lockdown?
It's really only been for the last, I want to say, 3 weeks properly that I've been writing.
Oh, really?
Like
Okay.
I've had it in my mind for forever to do one, and when I was young, I thought it would be like a Steve Vai, Joe Satriani guitar thing, and then over the years, I don't really. I mean, I still love all that music that I grew up listening to, but it's not where I lie as far as what I want to write. And I just I think there was things, because like what we were saying about Endeavour, like kind of finding them like, well, this is what the band kind of does now, and that can evolve, but I'm still only one guitar player, and there's certain limitations with that, and yeah, so I just started, like, I've had things lying around for years, and then just I hadn't really written music properly for about 3 years, and then it just, a couple of weeks ago, I just started getting this like huge wave of inspiration for the first time in ages, and just started taking all these like demos and bits and bobs and started fleshing out stuff. So I think I don't know, maybe like 50% the way through writing it.
Bloody hell. Nice.
Yeah. So and it's I hope, but it's supposed to be different from Endeavour. I mean, I'm going to be doing most of the vocals on it, and it ranges from stuff like there's one track which is just like so brutally heavy, at least compared to what Endeavour does. It's like my goal with it is like, if people feel uncomfortable listening to it, then I've done the right job. Like one part at the end is like I've taken a scream, like 3 screams, cut them up, and like reverse them, and like put bit crushers on them, and it's like just like stuff like that, like kind of very strapping and laddish, where it's just like you're listening to bits and you're just like, oh, what's going on?
Something strapping young lad would do.
Yeah. So something very much in that, but that's just one song, and then like one song I don't think even has guitar in it. It's just piano, and like it's dark, but it's like more ballad-esque, and then some stuff will be like kind of more like prog rock, but like heavy-ish, but like more layered up, and like so yeah, a whole bunch of different things really.
Yeah, I suppose if you're not writing for your band, you're just going, I want to write just to see. Then you're not. I suppose it's quite nice because I've never felt compelled to write any solo stuff really. I've always think I need to write for a band, and it needs to sound like this, and I'm not good enough to really kind of take bits of inspiration from all sorts of genres. So I imagine it's pretty cool to have that kind of just, I say, that wave of inspiration. Just go, I'll just write what I want then, rather than think I need to write like this for this band.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like no holds barred, all bets are off. Like I'm not even considering how it's going to be pulled off live, if and whether it will ever be played live. I'm not thinking that far ahead. I'm just thinking I want to make this record the way I want it to be, and if I come out of it at the end just holding it, going, yeah, I did it. That's like I would like to take it further than that, but like my first goal is just to be able to get it to a copy of the record in my hand, and say like, yeah, that's your thing, like, and like your thing. It's not a share. It's like you don't have to share this with anybody.
Yeah. No, I think that's a big reason for why a lot of people do it. I guess first and foremost is just to say, kind of this is me.
It's like
so
you don't
if
have
someone
to
says,
compromise.
"Oh, your music, what's it all about?" You can go.
You don't have to compromise
this
at all with anyone,
kind of
do
thing.
you? You can just do exactly what you do.
And also lyrically, it's way more personal than anything in Endeavour. Like, there's a couple songs that saw it come out of it, and I was just like, I can't hand these lyrics off to another person. I was like, I mean, I could, and there've been times where stuff in Endeavour has started to get more personal, but like you start to feel a bit like uneasy about it, where you're like, is it someone else's voice on my thoughts? That just makes me feel weird. And so that was another big reason, is just like having ultra personal songs on it, and I'm just like, well, I've got to sing them.
They'd probably never sing it the same way you would, because it would.
Yeah, they might sing it better.
I said it's your voice, isn't it? So yeah,
maybe not with the same emotion, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm focused on. Again, like we were talking about, like not trying to follow, like, oh, we've got to do it to a click and we've got to get it sounding like this. It's just like, no, just get it sounding like you. You know, because I think again, like Callum said, not to be lectury, but I think that's what maybe a lot of bands don't or forget about now, is like bands just sounded the way they did because of the people that were in them and the way that they wrote. Yeah. They weren't chasing. I mean, they might have been, obviously everybody's influenced by things, and we want to do kind of this kind of thing, but we'll mix it with this, and then but they weren't chasing just like, we're gonna be like that,
Yeah,
and there's a lot of that nowadays, isn't there? Like just bands that just go, I want to sound exactly like that, and it's not like I want to use bits of that and put it to something I've come up with, and it's a lot of, again, lectury, but copy paste sort of stuff going on nowadays, which is a bit of a shame. So it's cool. It's cool when I hit, like I said, Endeavour. I remember being like, because you've been around, you've been playing. I mean, Endeavour's been going 12 years. 10 years.
I mean, the band sort of got started about 10 years ago, but we didn't play a show or really have a band until about 2 years after that. So 8 years, I want to say.
Yeah. So you were like one of the bands in Bristol, like, because obviously when I was sort of gigging, I remember hearing a lot about Endeavour, like, sort of, they're from BIM, they're the guys, they're the sort of prog aficionados, they're the sort of the premium, you're one of the sort of the biggest bands in Bristol, and you had a very distinct, and you've always had a very distinct sound, but now I hear more bands from around Bristol, they're all sounding like a band from America and stuff, rather than having their own distinct sound, and it's a kind of, because Bristol has a really good metal scene, and it used to be really diverse, but I don't know if this might be because I'm just hyper focusing on the kind of the same bands that I see a lot.
Yeah, I mean,
I agree.
Yeah, and I think like the gent thing became a really big thing in Bristol. And there, and like anything, there were some great bands, and then there were some ones that were just copied and pasted, basically, and like, all nice guys, and there's nothing like wrong with that necessarily, but it just saturates the scene, and then it just we all know what happens when the scene becomes saturated. It's just
You have an 8-string though, Ian.
I do have one. I never play it.
Do you not? I surprised me, actually.
I used it. I started working on a cover of Freak by George Michael.
Nice.
And just because it's all, all that stuff is like, it's all, the production's super layered and all these kind of like, and I just took the 8-string and I detuned it to like whatever the note is, like Z. Below E in that range, and it was just like, just to like double up some of the parts, and I was just like, that sounds cool. Like,
that is cool.
So like, I don't ever play it really. I mean, I love Meshuggah, and I mean, obviously, I think if you own an 8-string, you've liked Meshuggah at some point, but it's so hard not to do that when you play one. So like, I made a list of like, because I thought like I would like to use it. I like the range, but I actually made a list of like rules for myself. I was just like, so if you're gonna write, your song can't be an F sharp, because that means you'll just be going da 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 on that string. I was like, your riff cannot start on the 8th string. So I made like all these rules, like limitations, so that like, at some point, if I pick it up, I'm gonna do something with it that's hopefully just not the stereotypical 8-string thing. But I haven't done it yet.
Force a bit of creativity, yeah. No, that makes sense.
It's
cool,
funny because I played 7 strings mainly, and I know you're a 7-string player as well. I'm a 7-string guy, but when I rejoined Awake by Design in October, I was forced to go back to. I said forced. I chose to go back to 6 strings.
Forced.
Forced at gunpoint.
But the thing is, as soon as I did that, I suddenly had this burst of creativity. I've not played a 6-string in years, so I think sometimes changing it up a little bit can inspire. I always found that because I got so comfortable with the 7-string, suddenly going back to something I'd not played properly in like 6-7 years or something. Because I've played 7 strings for even when I was in Awake by Design, before I left, I was mainly playing 7 strings towards the end, and then suddenly going back to 6 in a drop tuning, which again I've not played it in years. I usually play in standard B. I was like, there's loads of different things.
It's like doing the acoustic stuff as well recently. Like, it's kind of. Just a whole different world, and I haven't played acoustic in years, so to pick up an acoustic again, it just brings out all these new ideas because it's just such a different way of like playing guitar on an acoustic.
You heard it here first.
Yeah.
Whoops.
That's fine.
What do you mean? What EP? I have no idea what you're on about.
Huh?
How many people are watching that are going to be like, oh my god, acoustic?
6 million apparently. Cool. Well, I think that has probably been long enough for a podcast. A bumper podcast, I think, clocking in at nearly an hour 20. So that's cool. I think we could probably go on for a lot longer. So if you'll come back, we'd love to have you back again later on another episode.
Most certainly. It's been
Amazing.
a pleasure.
Fantastic. So where can we hear you? Where can we find about your bands and your music?
I mean, Facebook's probably... Yeah, I mean, for Endeavour, facebook.com/Endeavour Metal, and then most of the social media sites, it's whatever that site is, and then Endeavour Metal is the tag or the
awesome
the link.
Cool.
And then I've got my own personal music page, which is facebook.com/Iain GT Davies music. I'm not great at posting on that, to be honest. And hopefully, maybe once I get closer to getting with the solo record done, and I'll actually have like kind of stuff prepared and stuff to post on there. But that's basically where, if you're going to hear anything, it's going to be on there.
Cool.
Amazing. We'll make sure we link that in the description of the YouTube video, so do check that out.
Seriously, check out
show
Endeavour.
some love.
They are monstrously talented guys, and they're insanely heavy.
So check them out. Absolutely. So just the usual spiel. So if you are listening to this, do subscribe to us on YouTube to watch the videos. The podcast itself will be going out on Anchor, our service, which will be linked in the video and in our link tree. So just check out any of our social media or our website of wakebydesign.co.uk, and you'll be able to find there's a link for the podcast. But it goes out on Spotify and everything like that as well. If you like what you hear, you can support us on Patreon, so you can go to, again, it's put it to the back of the list so you can't see it. There it is, patreon.com/Awake by Design. It should be showing up on the screen now. So you can join there, and anything that goes towards that will help our podcast and help us keep on. Obviously, you don't have to, but any patronage, I suppose is the correct term, would be muchly appreciated, and it does go to us and helps us carry on. But other ways you can help us, you can subscribe to us on Twitch as well, where we broadcast this live every time. So check our social media for when we do this, because it's quite off the cuff. But we'll let you know when the episodes come out. Thanks to Iain for joining us today, and thanks to Toby and Callum from the band as well for tuning in. We'll be back, I'm sure, tomorrow actually for our studio cam, where we're going to be streaming all day as we record more for our upcoming piece of content, which is kind of secret, but not, because we're streaming the whole thing. So we'll see what happens. But do tune in for that. And cheers, guys. Exactly. Secretly public.
Nothing's secret now.
No, it's all out in the open. Right, quick, run away before anyone figures out what's going on. Another great podcast. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Matt. That's awesome. You just caught the end of it. Or you've been here all along. I don't know. But yeah. Anyway, thanks a lot, guys, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.
Cheers.